Welcome back to America's Haunted Atlas. Our journey into the shadows continues. Number 6. The Southern Ghost Circuit, from New Orleans through the Old South. One of the most eerie road trips in the United States does not follow a single highway. Instead, it links together a series of routes through the American South, starting in New Orleans and stretching through parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Along the way are plantation roads, historic districts, battlefields, and backroads where stories of hauntings are deeply intertwined with the history of slavery, war, and disease. New Orleans alone has endured epidemics, fires, flooding, and extreme violence over the centuries. Above-ground cemeteries, narrow streets, and centuries-old buildings create a setting where it feels natural to believe that the past still hangs in the air. As you drive away from the city, plantation byways and rural roads lead past sites where enslaved people lived, worked, and died, often in large numbers and under horrific conditions. Later, the same region saw Civil War battles, lynchings, and other acts of brutality. Visitors report shadowy figures moving across balconies and courtyards in old neighborhoods, phantom footsteps in hallways of historic inns, and voices in alleys that fall silent when anyone turns to look. Out in the countryside, travelers describe mysterious lantern-like lights crossing fields at night, apparitions near former slave quarters, and spectral figures along quiet roads that disappear when approached. Coastal and low-lying areas contribute their own tales of ghostly soldiers, drowned sailors, and apparitions tied to old fortifications and docks. What makes this road trip feel uniquely unsettling is the density of real, documented suffering attached to almost every mile. The ghosts here are not nameless legends. They are often connected to specific events, communities, and groups of people whose stories can still be traced in archives and family histories. Driving these routes, you are constantly passing places where lives were taken, freedom was denied, or entire communities were shattered. The haunting becomes an atmosphere more than a single event. Major highways and smaller roads throughout this region remain fully accessible. Cities like New Orleans, Charleston, and Savannah offer numerous history and ghost tours, while plantations and historic sites may require tickets or guided entry. Number 7. Western Ghost Town Roads, deserted streets in the desert. In the American West, especially across parts of Arizona, Nevada, and California, you can design a haunted loop that passes through abandoned mining towns, isolated desert highways, and motels that have more guests on their ghost tours than in their rooms. During the day, these places may appear like movie backdrops. After sunset, with the wind pushing dust through broken windows, they feel much different. Many of these towns sprang up almost overnight when gold, silver, or other resources were discovered. They filled with prospectors, workers, and families. When the mines failed or richer deposits were found elsewhere, populations collapsed just as quickly. Mining accidents, epidemics, lawlessness, and desperate violence all left marks on these communities. Some were partially preserved as tourist attractions, while others were left to rot. Visitors to western ghost towns report figures in period clothing seen from a distance and gone when approached, footsteps on wooden floorboards in locked buildings, and children's laughter echoing through empty streets. In old saloons and hotels still operating as attractions or lodging, staff talk about doors opening on their own, objects moving, and cold patches in otherwise warm rooms. On the highways between these stops, drivers describe lone figures by the roadside, strange lights pacing their vehicles, and the unnerving feeling that another car is following them when no headlights appear in the mirror. This road trip is especially haunting because of the contrast. Immense open desert creates the illusion of total emptiness, while each town concentrates decades of human hope, greed, fear, and loss into a few streets. Knowing that entire communities rose and fell here in a generation, sometimes leaving behind little more than a cemetery and a main street, gives the smallest unexplained sound an amplified impact. In 2026, many ghost towns are open to the public, with tours, museums, and some renovated buildings offering overnight stays. Others are semi-abandoned, with crumbling structures, exposed mine shafts, and minimal supervision. Anyone driving this loop should be cautious, respect warning signs, avoid entering unstable buildings, carry plenty of water and fuel, and remember that help can be a long way off if something goes wrong, whatever you think caused it. Number 8. Appalachian haunts, mountain roads, and old institutions. A road trip through Appalachia, from West Virginia down through portions of Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina, can take you from winding mountain roads to some of the most infamous abandoned institutions in the country. The combination of isolated highways, coal towns, and former asylums gives this region a distinct and heavy atmosphere. For decades, coal mining accidents, economic collapse, and deep poverty left scars across Appalachian communities. On top of that, the region hosted large state hospitals and prisons that over time became overcrowded and controversial. Reports of harsh treatments, neglect, and suffering in these places are part of the historical record. When many of these institutions eventually shut down, their hulking buildings remained behind, often looming over small towns. People driving the back roads report orbs and strange lights drifting through the trees, voices or singing heard from valleys where no houses are visible, and figures seen on the side of the road that vanish when approached. Inside former asylums and prisons now open for tours, visitors talk about shadow shapes in hallways, unexplained bangs and door slams, and screams or moans from empty wings. Some describe being touched, pushed, or suddenly overwhelmed by sadness or panic in rooms associated with particularly grim events. What makes these locations especially disturbing is that the stories are anchored in documented suffering. The names of former patients and inmates can often be found in old records. The deaths, abuse, and neglect are not rumors. They are part of the historical narrative. When people say they sense something in a specific ward or cell block, they are standing in a place where terrible things are known to have happened within living memory. In 2026, the mountain roads of Appalachia remain drivable, but can be steep, foggy, and challenging, especially in bad weather. Several former institutions operate as historic or paranormal destinations, offering both daytime history tours and nighttime investigations with strict rules and liability waivers. A haunted road trip through this region is as much about confronting the reality of how people were once treated as it is about chasing ghost stories. Number 9. The Atlantic Shadow Drive, Lighthouses and Shipwreck Shores. Along the Atlantic coast, from the rocky shores of New England down through the Mid-Atlantic and the Carolinas, you can follow coastal highways that pass within minutes of lighthouses, old ports, and shipwreck sites. In sunlight, these routes offer picture-perfect views of the ocean. In stormy weather or dense fog, they reveal a very different personality. For centuries, this coastline has been a graveyard for ships. Storms, fog, hidden shoals, and navigation errors drove vessels onto rocks and sandbars within sight of land. Lighthouse keepers and their families often lived in isolation, working under constant pressure and danger. Some died in accidents, others from illness, and some by their own hand. Roadways that trace these shores also have long histories of weather-related crashes and sudden deadly accidents. Visitors at lighthouses report seeing figures pacing in the lantern room of towers that are supposed to be empty, or lights swinging in darkened towers long after official closing time. Beachgoers and locals talk about dim ship-like shapes appearing offshore in fog, then fading as if they were never there. Along coastal roads, drivers tell stories of a woman walking alone in outdated clothing, soaked in rain, who disappears when anyone slows down to help. Others notice what looks like another car's taillights ahead, only to realize that no other vehicle is actually on the road. The disturbing part of this route is how easily evidence vanishes. Storms erase tracks, waves swallow debris, and fog hides everything more than a few feet away. Yet the stories persist, handed down in seaside towns where the sea has always taken as much as it has given. The idea that some spirits are still walking toward a safety they never reached or patrolling a shoreline they once tried to protect is hard to shake as you follow the same roads. Major highways and smaller roads throughout this region remain fully accessible. Many lighthouses offer tours by day and occasional special events after dark. Some roads are narrow and vulnerable to weather, and authorities take storm warnings seriously. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, driving these routes during a foggy night makes it easy to understand why the stories endure. Number 10. The ultimate haunted road trip, turning the map dark. Seen together, these routes form more than just a list of spooky drives. They trace a shadow map across the United States, a network of highways, two-lane back roads, ghost towns, forests, mountains, coasts, and old institutions where the past refuses to stay quiet. You could start in New Jersey's woods, climb through Appalachian switchbacks, follow southern backroads, cross the deserts, and end beside a storm-beaten lighthouse, never once leaving the company of someone else's nightmare. Every one of these roads is open to travelers in 2026. Some segments are polished tourist attractions with tickets, tours, and souvenir shops. Others are ordinary working roads where people commute to their jobs and school, unaware or unconcerned about the legends attached to them. That is what makes this final location the most disturbing of all. It is not one place. It is the realization that almost any American road can become haunted once you know what has happened there. As you drive, it becomes clear that the country's history is not safely locked away in books and museums. It is built into the asphalt, the guardrails, the bridges, and the faded signs. Crashes, crimes, disappearances, desperation, and quiet personal tragedies have taken place on the very stretches of road we now speed across without a second thought. Some of those stories are remembered, many are not. So the question is not whether these roads are haunted. The question is whether, knowing what you know now, you would be willing to pull over on one of them at midnight, turn off your engine, kill the lights, and sit in the dark, listening to the wind and to whatever else may be out there with you. If you want to keep exploring real locations where history and haunting overlap, subscribe to America's Haunted Atlas. There are countless other roads, towns, hotels, and forgotten buildings waiting to be mapped. And in a future episode, we may just focus on the most haunted stretch of pavement in your state. Stay curious, stay cautious, stay haunted.